Hey everyone, welcome to UAC Best Practices. We have an amazing interview with Dr. Brian Dahmer, who has 6 clinics. He's growing, just got a big offer to be bought out at a 5, almost 6 times multiple on his clinic, and decided not to because he's building a business that he doesn't have to sell. He entertained it, but he really gets into how he built it, his mentality, his knowledge, a lot of the lessons. If you're considering building and scaling chiropractic clinics, this podcast is one you cannot miss. Thanks for joining us.
Everyone, welcome to the UAC Best Practices podcast. Our goal always with the podcast is that you could learn something from one of our UAC members. Many times you learn multiple things in one podcast, but something you can actually take and learn and apply, or gain the confidence that something you hoped could be true, like we have today, is actually possible. And so I'm going to turn over to my co-host, Dr. Alan Miner, and he can make the introductions of our special guests today.
Thanks, Cap. Appreciate you. Yeah, we have Dr. Brian Dahmer, and Brian's a newer UAC member. If I remember right, you joined in Boca last year, and I had the pleasure of breaking bread and having a meal with Brian in Beverly Hills at our last conference. And Brian, I in my day job with Chiro Matchmakers, we talk to chiropractors every day, and most of them, it's amazing how often the vision and goal is, I'd like to own multiple clinics. And when we first met, Dr. Brian, not only do you own multiple clinics, but you were considering an offer on the table, which was it was a great offer. And so right away I knew, wow, there's a lot to learn from Dr. Brian, because you don't just put together 6 clinics on luck and then have somebody come in and want to give you a valuation. And so most recently I saw you on social media in Italy, and if I understand right, you're in Italy with your family. You're not dealing with anything in 6 offices. You got a leadership team in place. You have systems in place. So let's start there. I mean, I know there's a lot to this, but give us a little bit of the high level, maybe working backwards from having the time freedom in Italy, and how did you go back to where it started, and how'd you build what's in place?
Sure, absolutely. And thank you, both, Brian and Alan, for having me on. I always love to share, and hopefully you gain something from this and be able to apply it, right away. But initially, my father's a chiropractor. He's still practicing. And, my father has such a passion. If there's anything I learned from him, it was his passion. We would go into a restaurant. He would compliment the owner, on the meal. And next thing you know, he's adjusting them in the booth. And I was so embarrassed. I'm like, oh, here we go again. Everywhere he went, he just wore chiropractic on his sleeve. And, it was embarrassing. But then I was like, man, he really brought so much value to the community. And he always said, son, the most expensive lunch you'll have is in your own office. And so from the very beginning, I knew I wanted to be a chiropractor and continue on that philosophy and help as many people as I could. I interned with Dr. Ben Lerner way back in the day in Orlando, Teach the World and Body by God. And coming out of school, nobody knew how to set up a care plan or take somebody through a day 1, day 2 process. We were just kind of taught how to treat, Medicare patients and do the PART system. And so, fast forward, I got really good at doing volume, and then just kind of went back to CJ Mertz in Texas and said, hey, you started this whole thing. Let's see what you have to say about it. But I kept gaining just little nuggets from just people around me, and then applying it and making it my own. And, we were seeing 400 or 500 people a week. It was just me. I added a second doctor right out of Palmer, Florida, and then instantly realized that, I want to continue to expand and just help more people. More people need this. So we opened up a second practice, and it was scary because I'm like, man, what if Dr. Patel leaves? And now I got to run 2 practices and be in 2 places. And so that was the initial fear. And I paid Dr. Patel, who's my first associate, really well. And I think that's what retained him ultimately, you know what I mean? And then we kind of had several discussions over the years. He's still with me, been with me 15 years.
Wow.
Great. Wow.
Phenomenal doctor, and we have a great relationship. And he commutes over an hour to come to the office, over an hour. And so, and he has the busiest office. That office is just under 2 million in chiropractic alone, and it's 1,500 square feet, you guys. So,
Awesome.
you know, that's another lesson I learned. It's not where you are, it's who you are.
Yep.
And so we took those kind of lessons and then just started duplicating it. And we opened 6 offices. We actually have 7 offices in 2 weeks. We're opening another one, and they're all about 15 minutes apart in 3 different counties. And, you know, my philosophy was if I can decrease my overhead by getting on and doing a radio, commercial or a TV commercial, and then it just covers all of our area. And we just, divide the ad spend between the 6 or 7 offices, along with staff. If I have a doctor we train up in one office and he wants to be further south or further north, then we can just transplant him and put him over there. So it made it really easy to shift staff, to create a bigger brand and a bigger voice in the community. And then something magical happened after we got past the 3rd or 4th office. Attorney groups from Orlando, Miami, Brandon started to call us up and said, "Hey, we saw your group north of Tampa. Where the heck is Homosassa? We have no doctors in, Brooksville or Inverness and all these rural areas that were north of Tampa where we were." So we started getting referrals and attention from these larger groups that were advertising in Florida for personal injury. And so there's a lot of power when you can combine, the great minds together. We have very diverse practitioners, some that are passionate about functional medicine and nutrition, some that are passionate about pediatrics or sports. And so instead of having that referral leave and go somewhere else, they stay within our group. Our doctors work, well together to keep that patient in the practice. And we're able to expand our services and add other arms to the practice, that we never had just with, one location. So I'm having fun. I'm enjoying it. 5 years ago, I stopped treating patients. It was just too much. I was seeing 350 people a week and managing 3 practices. And I decided that my purpose, a lot like, the professors that you meet or the speakers at the convention. I mean, eventually they stepped away their practice to go fight for our laws and rules or give back to the new students coming through. And I figured my purpose now is to train docs coming out of school to be just remarkable doctors and learn how to communicate with patients, commit them to care, and, ultimately have them for lifetime wellness. And just spreading the message of chiropractic. So we've done that, really well. 5 years ago when I stepped out, it gave me more time to do other things. So I integrated an office and hired an MD, a nurse practitioner, and I never had time to do that before. And so, and we did this because there's a lot of rule changes that happened in Florida. They made you have an emergency medical condition in order to unlock the $10,000 of PIP for a patient, and they cut chiropractic out of it. And so you had to have a nurse practitioner give that diagnosis, or a dentist, if it was related to TMJ, believe it or not. So they had these nurse practitioners forming, LLCs and running around to chiropractic offices just writing EMC scripts. And I'm like, this is silly. Let's just bring it in-house and do it ourselves. And then that turned into PRP injections. And just, I sat down with my team and I said, listen, our mission statement, and by the way, if you've never done this, it's very powerful, but I took everybody, out of the office and brought them over to my house. And we sat together as a group and rewrote our purpose and mission statement. And it was just very powerful because everybody had an input. It was in 3 different phases. And we sat down quietly and wrote down like the top key terms that described our practice and where we wanted to go, how we wanted to change healthcare. And the next week, everybody just owned it. They had it memorized. It was at the tip of their tongues. They were passionate when they communicated with patients on the phone. And it just was like a big revival for our entire company. And so if you haven't done that exercise, and maybe it's just been a few years since you've updated your core values, I would highly recommend that. But, when we integrated, we rewrote those. And, our goal is to still get people out of pain without addictive drugs and surgery, helping them to achieve the freedom and life they deserve. And we've stuck to that model and just continued to grow on our medical side. It's an independent office by itself, and it actually feeds the 6 chiropractic offices. So we have our nurse practitioner travels around once a month, does exams. The chiropractors set up all the exams, and then they go to the medical center for services. And it keeps my overhead low. And so I have an MD and 2 nurse practitioners on staff there. And we do, HRT and PRP stem cells, trigger points, and we do it for PIP cases as well as cash. And so I'm reaching people even through my medical office that I never would chiropractically. Even though we think we're the best chiropractors in the world, some people still just don't understand. They were raised in a medicine cabinet. That's just, the way they are. But they'll come through to my nurse practitioner. And then when my nurse practitioner recommends chiropractic, they follow through and end up, on a care plan and saying, wow, I'm kind of mad because I wish I would have been here sooner. But I just didn't believe in it, didn't understand it on everything that you guys are capable of doing.
All right. Yeah, I got a few questions that I'm sure listeners are wondering, Dr. Brian. First, you just clarified. So you've got 6 chiropractic clinics. I think the first question is, when you made the jump to clinic 2 to clinic 3, did you start them all from scratch? Did you buy any? And then is it straight chiro? Are they cash? Are they insurance? How did you scale? Where did you find people? Has there been a system? Have you done it differently along the way? Have you had any missteps that you had to kind of learn from? Kind of explain just how you got from 1 to 6. What was the model and the steps in that?
Sure. I mean, yes and yes to all those questions. And I've made a lot of mistakes, and then, finally got the right answer. You get no, no, no. And then finally you get the yes, and you're like, all right, let's duplicate this. But the first office I bought from my father, and I bought the real estate with it. And I did hard money lending. And if I know what I knew now, I would have negotiated with him harder. But I'm glad he didn't give it to me, because I learned a very powerful lesson from it. You know what I mean? And, that office is paid off cash now. But it was a big turnaround and changing a lot of bad habits, with patients, because he had an associate in there. He hadn't been there in 10 years. And the second office, I started from scratch in a gym. And so I went in, I rented a room in a gym, and just threw him a couple $100 a month, and I said, I'm not sure where this is going to go. And then all of a sudden the waiting area got so full, and he's like, listen, we got to make a change. You got too many people in here. And so I ended up moving next door and signed a lease with a doctor and another massage therapist. And then over time, I took over their leases, and then over time I bought that building. And so, I kept my overhead real low, at the beginning on that second office, again, just because there was a lot of unknowns. The third office, I said, you know what? I'm going to try to open this and never step foot in it. That's the challenge. And I had an associate that I was following through school. He was a college quarterback and just a natural leader. And I'm like, I'm going to put this doc in this office. He's going to crush it. And I took my best manager and I put that manager with this doctor. And I spent a lot of time with him. He preceptored at our office. So I had 3 months to really dial him in. And then we did the grand opening together. And that office, right next to Target in a main shopping area, perfect location, went from 0 to $1 million in 3 years. A lot quicker than the second office, which took 5 or 6 years. You know what I mean? So as you're duplicating, you just get, you redo the systems, and it was quicker. And then the fourth office, I went to Inverness, and I just started cold calling on buildings and found a building for sale, bought it, put LabCorp as a tenant next door, put our office in. But initially, before I bought the building, I started off in a radiology office, and I rented 2 rooms. And I did the same thing. I built up 100 patients, and then I bought the property, and then I transferred it over, and now it's a full-fledged office. So I kind of duplicated that. I'm a big believer in waiting list practice and just, building that anticipation of people just, I can't wait till your doors open. I can't wait till your doors open. And then all of a sudden you have, 100, 150 patients from ground one. I mean, if you look at any big box gym, they go in there and pre-sell memberships 6 months in advance. And then when they open their office, then they're already profitable in the first 30 days. And so for me, that was important. As far as getting staff, I mean, every avenue you can think of, from Indeed to telling other colleagues around me, hey, if you have a chiropractor, I'm interviewing. Chiro Matchmakers obviously was a huge success. And you guys really go above and beyond in the profiling of a doctor and helping with the contract and just really figuring out their personality, if they're going to be a practice builder, a caregiver. That's just so vital. And you don't get that from Indeed. I made a lot of mistakes, along the way, getting the wrong person just because it was convenient. They were moving to Florida in my area, not necessarily their skill set. And so, I've learned so much over the last 5 years interviewing docs. But you're going to have turnover. You're going to have staff issues, and I quickly found out that I need to go back to school and take management courses and management by statistics and redo my HR and a lot of other things as you grow that you didn't need before when you were just the main one in there, just controlling things.
Yeah.
Doc, first of all, we have something in common. We started in practice. I started as an associate right down the street with Tony and Alda from where you were. I don't know if ever met Tony.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, so we had that in common. And my first practice, my first practice was actually, and it was an awesome experience. But you mentioned something, and I don't know if you really said the details of it, but this idea of priming the pump before you open a location. What are, like, if we got one thing or like three things about how you can market prior to opening a practice, so that you hit the ground running? I've seen a lot of docs not do that, right? They just open and they're like, oh crap, I've got an empty space, and they go and maybe they make it, right? But they could have opened with 50 patients a week, something, at least something. So what are your top tips to do that?
We just had a strawberry festival in Floral City right here where we live. Thousands of people come through, and my marketers went out. We set up tents, and we're just out there communicating with the patients. We have a massage therapist that, does chair massages and attracts people. We have a myovision, and we scan spines, do a stress screening. They started 50 new patients from that event over 2 days. And they all paid $25 to secure their appointment and literally just filled the schedule. So the more events that you can get out to and just educate, the public on what you do. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just get out there, BNIs and the chamber and getting on the radio, doing an announcement, even in the paper for your Medicare patients that you're going to have a grand opening. But, those are the key things. And then introducing yourself to all the referral sources. The referral source is going to be your DOs that don't do car accidents, or your attorneys that are looking for a fresh new place with nice equipment. You got to just put out there how you're different, what separates you, and then creating those relationships. I always have great relationships with gyms, to the point where they hang our banners in the gym, and anybody that gets hurt, they send to our office, because they know that we're going to get them better and keep them from canceling their membership at the gym. And so we develop a great relationship. They're high volume. Their sales team understands the process of trying to get somebody to commit to a gym membership. And so, and then you take the next step with the personal trainers, getting more critical cases back into being active and using them. They start as patients, and then they just become, again, part of your referral team. So all those things, really can be done ahead of time, including if you already have a location, let them know. And this was a big eye opener for me. And I opened the third office in the same town. They're 15 miles apart. And a lot of people said, that's a mistake. Why are you only have 200,000 people in Hernando County. Why are you opening in the same town? But there's a huge influx of people in Florida, and traffic is just getting worse and worse. And believe it or not, even though it's 15 miles, it takes half an hour to get across town sometimes.
Yeah, I know it well. Yep.
And so I opened the second office, and guess what happened? All the patients that had been patients over the last 5 years that hadn't come in were like, oh, you're right next to my gated community, my neighborhood where I drop my kids off at school. I'm going to start going again. And I reacted like 20 to 30% of my practice just by opening the other location closer to where they live. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That was all that was stopping them from, coming in. I've sent you so many postcards and messages and everything else. And all I had to do was open a location, to make it more convenient for you. So there's a lot of power in that as well. And you already got a good brand in the area. So it just makes it easier to duplicate that way.
Hey, Dr. Bryant, we're about out of time, and it's not even fair to ask this question, but you recently had an offer to buy out your clinics, and you decided, nope, not ready, not that season yet. Can you just touch on a couple of the high-level things of what made your business, your group, attractive to somebody to want to come buy it? What did you hear in that process that was good feedback that what you're doing is on the right path, that you're building something of value that another enterprise would come in and want to buy? Any gems there, nuggets?
There's probably 5 key things. Number 1 is be diversified with your payers. Make sure that you have cash, you have commercial insurance, you have VA or PIP. It's not just one stroke of a pen that changes a law and then all of a sudden all your profits go away. Yep. For Florida, personal injury, right? So make sure you're diversified with your payers. Number 2, make sure you have recurring revenue. So we have people that are on wellness that pay monthly, and we have a good, strong recurring revenue along with nutrition as well. Number 3 would be you're not a personality-driven practice, and it doesn't take you to be in there. So my name is not on my practice. It's Family Chiropractic Center for Wellness. And I walk in and I cover when docs are on vacation. They don't even know I'm the owner. And so investors like that, because then it's duplicatable, it's repeatable. And you've proven that with the associates. And, I think the other thing, obviously, besides, having good P&Ls, balance sheets, and just not having a lot of excessive debt when you expand, making sure that, your payroll is, 40% and you have your overhead in check, your 20 to 30% net profit, then they'll give you a multiple. And I got offered a 5.5, almost a 6 times multiple, which is unheard of. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When I got out of school, it's just, all right, open up, work as long as you can, and then sell to one of my associates for, if I'm lucky, I could get maybe, 700,000-800,000 for the practice. But most of the practices, because I've bought 2 practices and you buy them for 450, to 600, and then you turn them around. So it was just exciting. And I think for the first time, they're moving away from dentistry. They're coming into veterinarian. They're coming into chiropractic. They're definitely coming into integrated models. That brings even more value, when you have a medical attached to it. Again, it's that diversity and just being able to capture more people. And that's what attracted them to me. They heard it, and they would rather buy established groups that are well run, that are system driven. That's the other thing. Having good just policies, procedures, your manuals, your training program, onboarding program for new staff. And if you go in any office, the process is repeatable and looks similar. And so I was excited, but I still got a lot of passion, in me, and want to continue to expand. And so many people work really hard to get to this point of just owning a business and not a job. And I said, why do I want to give that up now? I mean, my kids are all in college and they can come out and be a part of it. And so I decided to turn it down, as tempting as it was. And the many conversations I had with key people in my life, I decided to continue to expand and grow, because I know there will be other offers in the future.
Yeah. That's really the key. If you build a business that you don't have to sell, you like it. I think that's something, everybody is so quick to, not everybody, but many entrepreneurs are building it to sell it. That's the focus. And it's like, well, what if you built it to keep it? It's a different mentality, and your evidence of, I don't, you know what? That's a great, but I like what I'm doing. This is fulfilling. I've still got a bigger mission behind it. It's inspiring, Brian. Last question for you. UAC, you're new to it, but what's the experience? How's it been? Why are you a part of it? For somebody listening and doesn't know UAC, what would you say?
I mean, I just like being a small fish in a big pond. I feel like, if you don't get out of your office, it's very rare that you can meet other people that you relate with, that are going through a lot of the same struggles. It's a non-competitive environment where you can just share best practices. And I try to listen as much as I can and ask questions. And I never leave without just meeting somebody extraordinary or growing and just having a big aha moment. Like, wow, I've never looked at it that way. I've been to a lot of different coaching groups and even taught in some, but this is just a whole new level. And I love the purpose of it. You know what I mean? It's a global purpose in what we do and what we're giving back, as opposed to just just the small little things that we sometimes get distracted by on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. It's certainly not coaching. It's something kind of different. You just get some, we call it loosely a mastermind, but you get around guys like you and ideas start
I can
flowing.
listen to this all day, and this is what happens at the events, and we're all together, and these kind of conversations are just what happens.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, it's 3-4 hours later, and then the night's over.
Well, Dr. Brian Dahmer, we thank you for taking time. You've given more than we asked, and we really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and knowledge. It's going to inspire a lot of people. Thank you, Doc.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Have a great one, guys. You too.
All right.
See you.
Bye.